Hey people, how are you doing today? My name is Makeda Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon, and I'm live here on my Instagram page. I'm going to save it and repost it to my YouTube page. Some of you already know who I am, some of you don't. I'm a lot of things, but one of them is I'm very much interested in culture, history, anthropology, and I am an Afro-Indigenous American. Grew up in New York City around all kinds of people, and I am a serious student of the diaspora, and a lot of that research comes from even studying dances, and music, and so, I mean, today, that's just a rough intro because I just want to get to the meat of the conversation. And today I want to talk about Hispanics using the N-word, okay? Many of you who follow me have seen me do videos in the past where I have spoken about my dislike for hearing that word all the time, okay? I definitely dislike hearing Black Americans use the N-word, okay? You've never heard me say it. You would never hear me say it. My twin brother doesn't say it. And when my dad says it, or somebody in his family, they don't say it as a term of endearment. They say it to speak about black trash, right? And they would never yell it across the supermarket or be saying it in public and saying it in front of other ethnic groups. So we have a situation where the whole world copies Black Americans, okay? I don't care where you go in the world, where you go, you hear people playing Black American music. And everybody copies us. And I don't think a lot of Black Americans really realize to the extent that people copy us, okay? And sometimes it's sickening because I see a lot of people talk shit about us, but yet everybody copies us, okay? And, it's NWA's fault for that. Yes, NWA making that shit popular. Because I remember when NWA came out, people weren't using that word in New York like that. And the N-word, that's the most popular slang word. Like, all the other slang words get played out at some point. But the N-word never gets played out. It just increases in frequency. And you have all these rappers who are supposed to be lyricists, and they can't think of another word to say. It's just nigga, 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 nigga this, nigga that, nigga that. Like, it's just sickening. I hate hearing it all day. Okay? And with hip-hop, they want to criticize women talking about sex, but don't have an issue with the N-word all day. So now we have a situation where all these other groups of people use it. And people feel entitled. And that's where I have a problem. Okay? So being from New York City, okay, and I'm from Harlem, Washington Heights, so I grew up around a lot of Dominicans who look just like me and my family. And when I was a kid, I was really confused because all I heard them speaking Spanish super fast, and to like a little kid, it was because Dominicans could be really loud. So I'm hearing one super loud, and I'm like, Dad, I'm confused. I thought the person was black. And my dad's like, well, they are black. They're Black Dominican. Dominican is a nationality, not a race, You can be a Black Dominican or a white Dominican or a Chinese Dominican, just like you can be a Black American, a white American, or a Chinese American, Dominican Republic, like America, is a nation with different ethnic groups. Okay. So, growing up in the Heights, I never had a problem with the Dominican a day in my life, and neither has my brother or my parents. Never had an issue, right? But I never would have been aware of how racist they are if it wasn't for my family pointing it out. Okay, so let me say something about me. I was also raised by Black scholars, right? So my dad was one of the founders of the first Afro-American Studies department in the country, okay? And he was a professor of Afro-American Studies, but he had no college degree. He got kicked out of Florida A&M for being heavily involved in the civil rights movement, okay? The year that the student sit-in started on the HBCU campuses in 1960, my dad was a freshman, okay? And so he ended up leaving the South and going north to Philly because he felt like he was either going to get killed or kill a cracker, okay? And so he went north, and his mentor was Queen Mother Moore of the Civil Rights Movement. If you don't know who Queen Mother Moore is, I suggest you look her up because she's a very important figure. And when my dad was like 19, she was already in her 50s, okay? She's a woman from Louisiana. And there's a picture of her holding me when I was born, all right? My dad was a part of Revolutionary Action Movement, one of the founders, RAM. They were the organization that strategically put the Black Panthers together, okay? He was not a Black Panther. The Black Panther grew out of that organization. My dad knew Malcolm very well. He was at over 100 of his speeches. Malcolm X was assassinated 5 blocks from where I grew up. The Audubon Ballroom was 5 blocks from where I grew up. And my dad was supposed to be with him that day. My dad was not a part of the Nation of Islam, but he knew Malcolm well, right? And my uncle went to Howard University with Stokely Carmichael. And my uncle, he's Jamaican, okay? And he wrote Stokely's autobiography, Ready for Revolution, okay? Stokely Carmichael, a.k.a. Kwame Ture. My dad wrote the afterword in the book, okay? So I grew up around black scholars and freedom fighters. I grew up around people who risked their lives to fight to change things in this country. And no, the fight is not over, okay? Because I hear a lot of younger people my age, people a little bit older than me or younger, complaining that, oh, nothing has changed, nothing has changed. And I think people have a lot of nerve who say that. It's not perfect. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. But anybody who actually knows about changing laws and changing things, it takes many years, many generations, okay? Already it's taken 100 years for cannabis to become kind of legalized in this country again. 100 years, because 100 years ago, cannabis was a part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia, and it was prescribed for over 50% of ailments, okay? It was recognized as a medicine, and then all the propaganda came, it became illegal, and it took 100 years for us to even get semi back to where we were. So that's many generations of people fighting, okay? So people who complain that nothing has changed, it's obvious to me that you don't come from, you come from a family who did nothing, okay? Because most black Americans in the 60s were not participating in the movement, okay? And the people that were risked a lot. And so I descend from that bloodline. So for me, it's like, and also I descend from Afro-Seminoles out of Florida, which were some of the fiercest fighters, okay? And I descend from that on both sides of my family. However, Florida now is something completely different. Florida now is just like, the black people in Florida are complacent like shit, allowing that stuff to happen, allow them to erase our history, and they don't be saying nothing. They try that shit in New York or Chicago or even in Atlanta. Okay, I feel like people will be more vocal. But regardless of that, that just understanding how things take many generations, and I come from, both of my parents are fighters, My mom's a labor organizer. And so I grew up watching organizing. I grew up listening to people who were on the front lines of fierce fights when it comes to changing laws in this country, when it comes to civil rights, and when it comes to workers' rights and stuff like that, right? So for me, I really, and nobody speaks for all black Americans, but I really, really cringe when I walk through my neighborhood in New York and I hear, Dominicans constantly saying the N-word. And a lot of them, even though I've never had a problem with a Dominican a day in my life, and neither has my brother, but I know about the hidden, and they never acted funny, unlike those racist white Cubans in Miami who I can't stand. Dominicans never acted funny, but if you have a conversation with them, or if you speak Spanish, you will hear some of the things that they would say. Like I remember when I was maybe a teenager, there was a toy drive in my neighborhood for parents who didn't have enough money to buy Christmas gifts for their kids. And when these little girls opened up the gifts and there was a bunch of black dolls, the mothers snatched those dolls out their hands and said they'd rather than not play with any doll than to play with a black doll, okay? My dad's good friend, who was a black Panamanian, like he was the one that put the event together and told us this. A lot of times Dominicans don't think that black Panamanians speak Spanish because they either sound like West Indians when they speak English or they sound like black Americans. So a lot of times people don't think they speak Spanish and they'll be saying crazy shit around them. You know what I'm saying? So I grew up aware of this, even though it was never evident in dealing with them. And that's why for years I didn't want to go to Dominican Republic. I felt like, oh, they're so anti-black. And I did go to the Dominican Republic last year for the first time, and that's like, you know, I talk about that on my other page, Makeda Valletta Travels. And I was going to do this video on my other page, Makeda Valletta Travels, which is my page about traveling and culture. And I might post this video in both places, because the thing is, for me, it's about having respect, right? And I feel like when it comes to Hispanics in the United States, the one thing about New York that's unique is that in New York, blacks, and I say blacks, I mean black Americans and Hispanics actually get along for the most part. We don't have beef in New York. Whereas in Chicago, you could say that, you know, there's a history of beef among certain groups. In California, you could say there's a history of beef among certain groups. In DC, like blacks and Hispanics I don't know there's beef, but they don't rock with each other at all. So New York is unique. Oh, and in Miami, the black people I know from Miami seem to be oblivious to this, but I've never experienced blatant racism until I went to Miami. The white Cubans in Miami are blatantly racist. And let's get it clear, you know, that when people say, oh, that person's not white, they're Cuban. Oh, they're not white, they're Colombian. You can be a white Cuban. You can be a white Colombian. You can be a white Brazilian. Yeah, there's a lot of black people in Brazil, but that doesn't mean all Brazilians are black, okay? Like, it's a nation. Just like you have white Americans, you have black Americans, same thing goes true for Colombia. Like, if you got dropped in a mall in Colombia, you wouldn't know you weren't in the United States. That's how varied people look, from indigenous to African to European to Chinese to Japanese and everything in between. Okay, it's a nation with mixed ethnicities. So, the thing is that I remember, I never liked hearing it in New York, but in New York, J-Lo said the N-word, I think it might have been in the 90s. Black America was mad about that. And black Americans in New York were defending her, saying, oh, but in New York, Puerto Ricans and black people are like this, you know, like she's black, it's like the same. And New Yorkers are trying to explain that to the rest of black America, when the rest of black America didn't like that and had an issue with it. Now, when I walk around and hear Dominicans in my neighborhood saying it, I don't like it, because I know that a lot of them don't rock with us for real, okay, even if I never had an issue with them. And regardless, I don't want to hear black Americans say it. But I definitely don't want to hear any outsiders. I don't care if you're black. Some people try to say, well, I'm black, but you're not a black American, okay? Those are the Senegalese people in Harlem. And I hear them, little kids, saying it. I don't like that either. Because first of all, a lot of the Senegalese people in Harlem don't even mess with black Americans. Okay? You ask any black person that grew up in Harlem, nobody has a Senegalese friend. But we all have Puerto Rican friends and Dominican friends, usually. Definitely Puerto Ricans for sure. Okay? Some of us have had Dominican friends too. I grew up with both. Never had a Senegalese friend. Like the Senegalese people in Harlem, there's no beef, but they stay in their isolated Senegalese world. They're not integrating with us. They're not opening up businesses and hiring black Americans. In fact, no ethnic group does that. They come to this country and they open up a business and hire all of their own people. If Americans did that, and we moved to other countries by the thousands and had a whole neighborhood that opened up business after business after business, only hired our people, people will be outraged. But yet it's okay for immigrant groups to do that in every single city in America, where they own whole neighborhoods of businesses and only hire their people. I'm not cool with that. That's number one. Okay, that's a problem. And I feel like no matter where you go, if you go to somebody else's country, have respect for their culture, period. You can say that black Americans and Caribbeans or South Americans are interlinked because people moved around. Yes, that's true. We have an interlinked history. And this is something that I do know very well, and I have learned a lot about in my studies of history and anthropology, and also my studies of black dance in the Americas. Our history is interlinked. But still, if I go to Haiti, if I go to Jamaica, if I go to Colombia, to Brazil, and I say something or do something that they say is disrespectful to their culture, I'm going to respect that and pay attention to that, and understand that even though we're both black or we're both Afro-Indigenous, I ain't Brazilian, I'm not Colombian, I'm not whatever, okay? We have cultural differences, and I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to respect your history and what you're saying. So I don't like the fact that you have these Hispanics over here that be trying to argue the right to say the word. Like on, there's a show called Black Ink. There's a show called Black Ink. It's a tattoo show. They have Black Ink Chicago, right? And Black Ink Chicago, there was a Mexican girl, tattoo artist, and she was using the word. And when black people in the tattoo parlor told her they didn't like it, she argued with them about her right to use it. That shit right there is dead disrespectful. People like that should just get punched in the face. Because if I'm a black American and I'm telling you that shit's offensive, and you're arguing for the right to say it, why are you arguing for the right to say it? The sense of entitlement. Like, first of all, stop copying us. Get your own swag. People copy everything black Americans do. And even though I don't like the N-word, period, but if there was a word that was derogatory in our history, and we're using it, and see, I blame rappers and ignorant black people for messing this up, because if hip-hop artists didn't say nigga, 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 nigga every goddamn 3 seconds, knowing that the whole world listens to hip-hop, knowing that if you go to hip-hop, I remember going to a Dead Prez concert 20 years ago, and everybody there was white. I was surprised. So a lot of the people that buy hip-hop and go to the concerts are white. So the fact that you have rappers constantly saying it all the time, you know, is so ignorant and hypocritical to me, right? But now people understand it's a consensus that black Americans have claimed, I'm not one of them, that like, oh, we reclaim the word and yada, yada, yada. To me, if you're not a part of that, stop trying to be a part of that, okay? I was listening to... yes, happy Black History Month to you too. And then just because you have some black friends who don't mind, doesn't mean, so you might have some black American friends who don't mind that you use the N-word. But then you're someplace else and some other black Americans tell you it's offensive, and you're just going to ignore it and say, well, my black friends over here don't care. That's some asshole shit, okay? Because, first of all, who are your black friends? They might have been raised by hood rats, okay? Number one. Number two, you know, you have to put region into context. In New York City, people feel like, you know, first of all, New York City, black American culture is not strong. That's one thing that I don't love about New York. I mean, I'm from Harlem, and Harlem is probably the place where it's the strongest. But New York is like Miami, okay? It's like you feel like you're in the Caribbean or in Africa or some other goddamn country, okay? Because everything else takes precedence. And there's a lot of disrespect. I told you I'm a dancer, and I study dances of the diaspora. There are dance conferences that have happened in New York that are supposed to be Afro-diasporic dance conferences, and it's supposed to feature black dance from around the world. And you see all these flags, right? So they're gonna have Afro-Puerto Rican dance, Afro-Dominican, Afro-Honduran, Afro-Colombian, Afro-Puerto Rican, Haitian. They have all these flags, no American flag. No Afro-American dance forms. And then I grew up in New York hearing Caribbean people say, oh, black Americans don't have any culture. I've heard that shit so much it makes me want to curse people out. We don't have any culture, but yet the whole world copies us. There are many black dances, okay? Just from Harlem alone, you got Lindy Hop. Breaking, okay? I was just listening to something from Tariq Nasheed, and I was never a huge Tariq Nasheed fan, but I never listened to him a whole lot. I'm just picky about scholars because I grew up around old school, real deal black scholars, so I'm picky with who I consider with younger people, you know what I'm saying? But I just listened to something that he was talking about with hip-hop, you know, this argument about Puerto Ricans being one of the inventors in the beginning of hip-hop. I've always credited them as being such. But he breaks down how all that stuff, Puerto Ricans didn't invent any of it. They were just around black Americans, and they started to do it, and they started to innovate on it. And he's very factual in what he says, down to the graffiti writing, which I know comes from Philly. My mom's the one that told me it came from a black dude in Philly, and I had never heard that before. But that's true, and he talks about that. But also, or even Jamaicans trying to say that hip-hop came from Jamaica, which is, Spice tried to come out her face and say that, and that pisses me off, because I know, like, my dad's from Florida, and he's always talking about how they used to rap back in the day. My dad be freestyling and rapping. He's 81. But he said that was, like, the norm back then. You know what I'm saying? And so you look at all the innovators, they all were black Americans from New York City whose family came from the South. And so, to me, I'm all about giving credit where it's due. And I don't like, see, I have love for the diaspora, especially those who have love for me. But I don't like when people try to, when black people from the diaspora try to take credit for ours and try to latch on. Like, I was listening to Godfrey. He's a Nigerian comedian from Chicago. And he was talking about how, black Americans basically invented every kind of music in America. And he kept saying, we this and we that and we this and we that. I'm like, what does he mean, we? He's from Nigeria. Like, you're not a black American. It's not we. So if you as a Nigerian are talking about the inventions of, you're talking about the history of black music in America and how black people in America are the ones that create all the music, say they. Say black Americans. Don't say we, because you're not a part of this. Okay? Just because you're so-called black, okay, doesn't mean that we're all in the same bucket, and it doesn't mean that you're a part of this legacy over here. It doesn't. And I get sick of people doing that, because if I went over to an African country, I wouldn't be saying we when I'm talking about achievements of Nigerians, because I'm not Nigerian. Just because I might see them as my brother or sister, I'm not Nigerian, so I'm not going to talk like that. And people do that all the time. And even with people that I know, I might be talking about certain frustrations with, certain Caribbean groups and black Americans and certain disrespect. And then they'll start talking from the we standpoint, from my standpoint, as if they're, like, you're not, and yeah, you were born here, you're a first generation American. That's not the same. This is the reason why I understand the importance of that term, foundational black American. Because everybody tries to put themselves into our bucket. If you were born here and your parents are born in the Caribbean and you're still waving around a flag from someplace else, and you still got family over there and will jump ship and run back over there. If Christmas time, you're cooking your Caribbean foods, listening to different music, because culture is about food, it's about music, there are cultural differences, like we're not the same, okay? So, and give respect where it's due. And if a black American is telling you, I don't care how black you think you are, you're not a black American. If you're a black African, if you're a black Dominican, if you're a black Puerto Rican or a black Colombian, I don't care. If black Americans are telling you, we don't like hearing you say that, then have some respect about it and not try to argue with us about your right to say it. That I have no patience for. There was a clip, and I felt like this for a long time, but there was a clip on Instagram that is an Instagram page, is a New York Instagram page, and there's a Dominican girl, I think she was Dominican. She was Spanish speaking, and she looked like she was Taino. Definitely did not look African, but she looked like she was like Taino. I'm assuming she was Dominican or some Spanish speaking country. And she was like, of course I'm from New York. I'll call my mother my nigga. And then her mother is talking to her in Spanish like, oh, who's nigga? I'm not your nigga. Nigga. I heard nigga like 4 times in like 5 seconds. I don't like that. So when I wrote on the video, that's not cool, I get attacked by all these Spanish-speaking people attacking me. I'm a black American, and I'm telling you, that's not cool to be at. But that girl and her mom barely spoke any damn English. And I can tell you, from growing up in the Heights around Dominicans don't, even though I never had a problem with them, they don't really assimilate, okay? Whereas like Puerto Ricans in New York do. Meaning, Puerto Ricans in New York speak English. They have mixed with black Americans, been allies of black Americans, have fought alongside black Americans. That's what I've always known. I was listening to some people talk about, I was listening to Narik Nasheed talk about some of the old school originators of hip hop, saying that it wasn't like that back then, that there was a conflict between Puerto Ricans and black Americans. I never saw that, never witnessed that. But I'm very much aware of the race issues in Latin America and how they cover it up with jokes. Because see, the thing is in Latin America, like, they joke a lot, which is one thing I like about Spanish culture, but at the same time, there are racist things hidden in these jokes. And then they try to act like, oh, we're not racist, because our family looks all kinds of ways and all kinds of colors. It's like, so what? That's not unique to you. The same thing is true in America too. You look at any black person in America, you're going to see people in the family that look white, people that look Indian, people that look African, and everything in between. Okay, so that's not unique to you, but that doesn't mean that you can be racist and have color issues. Okay, Latin America, the race problems in Latin America are way worse than they are in North America. That's the reason why most people don't know black Hispanics exist. Most people have no idea there's way more black people in Colombia than there is in America. Okay, most people have no idea that there's way more black people in Cuba, percentage-wise. Okay, they call Cuba Little Africa. Most people are unaware of that, and the reason why is because Latin America is so racist that all they put on TV are white Hispanics. Okay, you watch the novellas and everything, they don't even put the indigenous ones, they definitely don't put the black ones, they put a bunch of white Hispanics. Okay, and like I said, I've never experienced blatant racism to my face at any place I've gone in the South until I went to Miami and was dealing with the white Cubans in Miami. If I ever couldn't stand a group of people, it's them. And I told you, I come from a family that fought to change shit in this country. And my dad told me that those Cubans in Miami, when they moved there, they fought to keep segregation in this country, okay? And they look at you with complete disgust in Miami, okay? The black people who live down there who seem like they don't notice it, I don't know what the fuck they're paying attention to. But one thing I do know is, as well, talking about respect, all of these, in like a lot of cities, they have a little Cuba, a little Haiti, a little Dominican. Like, and a lot of times those neighborhoods used to be historically black American neighborhoods. Like I learned that little Haiti in Miami was historically a black American neighborhood. It was a historical black American neighborhood called Orange Grove or something like that. In my neighborhood in New York, they're trying to call it, they tried to call it Little Dominican Republic. My mom said that law that got thrown out, but when you go on Google Maps, it says Little Dominican Republic. When I'm in my parents' house and I go on Google and it tells my location, it says I'm in Little Dominican Republic. My mom said that they had a meeting, Dominicans in Manhattan were trying to change the name of the island. Manhattan is the name of the island. They were trying to change it to Quisqueya, okay, which is the indigenous name for the island of Haiti and DR. And my mom said she went to the meeting. And there were actually Dominicans that came here to fight against that. But it's like, why are you coming here trying to change? Like, if thousands of us move to your island, then we call it Little America. You know what I'm saying? And we want to change the name of your island to Manhattan. You know what I'm saying? Would you like that? Like, I just feel like it's disrespectful. And I feel like people do that and they don't learn the history and they don't care about the history. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that you have a lot of black Americans, people, like sometimes when I hear Caribbeans talking about like, oh, black Americans didn't like us, and a lot of times they're talking about childhood shit. They're talking about they got made fun of in elementary school. They got made fun of in junior high school. When you're a kid, everybody gets made fun of. It doesn't matter if you're fat, you're cross-eyed, you know, you got pimples. No matter what it is, kids are going to make fun of something. That shit don't count. How did adults act? And the fact of the matter is that black Americans in this country fought to change laws to allow more black immigrants to come here. The laws around immigration to this country were very racist. And of course they favored non-black people. Black Americans fought to change those laws to allow black people from other nations to be able to immigrate here easier. And then a lot of black Americans began to regret that, because what we began to see over time is that black people from a lot of other countries, this is not 100%, but there's a lot who come here and they look down on us, they think they're better than us, they don't take the time to learn the history, and they're not our allies, okay? And they benefit off of our fight, and then they have no respect. I can't rock with that, okay? And this is the thing too with, I'm not like, I really dislike Donald Trump, but when it comes to politics, there's a lot of things I dislike from the Republicans and a lot of things I dislike from the Democrats. But one of the things, and I don't want Donald Trump to be president, but one of the ways, I mean, I remember my dad said the first time, you know, if Donald Trump wasn't such an asshole, he would get more of the black vote, because a lot of black people are sick of immigrants coming. Like, it's just too much. Like, there's something needs to be done about that. And he said that, you know, and a lot of black Americans are going to speak up about it, because anytime we say anything, we get called, if we say anything, we get called xenophobic and racist by white Americans, and it's like, you know, a white person can't tell me anything about that, you know, because if the fact of the matter is, the more that different immigrant groups come here, a lot of times it's to the disadvantage and the detriment of black Americans. And my uncle, who I told you is Jamaican, and he wrote Stokely Carmichael's autobiography, aka Kwame Ture. The book is called Ready for Revolution. My uncle is Jamaican. He told me that when he came, he's in his 80s, like mid-80s now. He said when he came to this country, Caribbean people aligned with black Americans, okay? They aligned with the struggle of black Americans. Now, a lot of Caribbean people are not like that. He cannot stand Caribbean people that come to the United States with their nose up, looking down on black Americans and thinking they're better. He can't stand it and he calls it out. I have a very good Nigerian friend, may he rest in peace, my friend Fumi, who passed away in December. He was Nigerian, he lived in Harlem, and he used to always tell me about how he used to put Africans in their place when they would talk shit about us. You know what I'm saying? And so those are the only people I can rock with. Same thing with my white friends. All the white friends I had, they're the kind of white people that would put a white person in their place if they were talking greasy about us. You know what I'm saying? But the fact of the matter is, you know, there's a lot of black Americans, again, being regional. New York can be delusional to people. You think because you're a Spanish-speaking person in New York and you're using the N-word and nobody checks you, that shit's cool. You move around the country doing that, and you might get punched in the face somewhere because that shit's not cool everywhere. And there are a lot of black Americans in New York who don't like it. But a lot of times we don't say anything. I don't want to get in a fight with people, you know what I'm saying? But I was just in New York and I'm in the gym and I'm listening to groups of Dominicans who, this is the thing I was saying about Puerto Ricans in their assimilation. Like, Dominicans, like, again, even though I never had a problem with them, if you come to the Heights, okay, they listen, even the hip-hop they listen to Spanish trap music. They don't listen to the same rap music everybody else listens to. You go to the Puerto Rican area, Puerto Ricans listen to the same hip-hop black Americans listen to. Dominicans never do. They listen to Spanish trap music, right? They're in their own, you know, bubble, where, of course, they don't have to learn how to speak English. They're not trying. They own all the businesses. They hire all their own people, okay? And they're really staying in this Dominican bubble, and they're not like, we're Puerto Ricans aligned with the struggles of black Americans. We fought together, became activists together. You don't see that at all with Dominicans, right? And so I see Dominicans in my neighborhood who I know don't have any black American friends. They're not even hanging around black Americans. And they barely speak English, but yet I'm hearing them, nigga this, nigga that, nigga this, nigga this. I don't like that shit. And I have a right as a black American in my own country to tell you that, and you have some respect and apologize and shut the fuck up with that shit. But that's not what happens. They want to argue you down. Love and Hip Hop Miami. There was a white Cuban artist, okay, on Love and Hip Hop Miami, who was using the N-word in her music. And people were complaining about it. And Trina said something to her. And she wanted to argue with her about the right to use the word. And it's like, bitch, talking about she grew up in Brickell. Like, she grew up, I don't know, some white Cuban neighborhood in Miami. It's like, bitch, why do you feel so entitled to say the word? And you have black Americans telling you, we don't like it, and a bunch of people were complaining, and you want to fight for the right to use the word. I don't like that shit. I don't like that kind of entitlement. It's completely disrespectful. And this is what's making a lot of black Americans start to become like anti-immigrant or and me being from New York City, that was never in me because I grew up around people from all over the place. And I love people from all over the place, but at the same time, you have to have respect. The second I realize that you don't have respect, we have a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a Dominican friend who I brought this very issue to, this video that I saw that's posted in my stories on Instagram. And, you know, and I'm like, I said that it wasn't cool, and now I'm getting attacked by all these people. And he's, you know, on some bullshit too, like talking about shit that had nothing to do with it, about how he's just a bunch of deflection. And to me, not enough, like, yeah, you're right, that shit's, you know, call out your people. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, I just don't like it. So I don't know how you guys feel, but I know that all black Americans aren't in the same boat, okay? So for me, I wasn't raised by hood rats, all right? I was raised by black people who actually fought in this country to change things, okay? They didn't flee the country when shit became tough. You know, I come from people that risked their lives. And this is the reason why, for me, I respect activists, but I'm an activist in my own right about certain things, but I'm not the kind of activist that's like trying to change laws on a large scale for the future generations. And the reason why is because I feel like the future generations don't care. Okay, the future generations become very unappreciative. Okay, and you see that now with black people now, like idiots like Kanye West talking about, you know, Harriet Tubman didn't free the slaves, and you know, slavery was a choice, and saying all this dumb shit. Like, how dare you say that? How dare you come out your face and say something so disrespectful? So, or you have a lot of black people now saying, oh, nothing has changed. You know, nothing has changed. Like, oh, nothing has changed from the 50s and the 40s and the 30s. Nothing. I'm not going to say it's perfect and we don't still have work to do, but to say nothing has changed is ridiculous. So you have all these people who like really risked their lives. Some people who died trying to change these things for the right to vote, for all the, and you have all these ungrateful people saying nothing's changed and complaining about shit. So for me, it's like, yeah, no. Okay. Now, when it comes to using the N-word, it depends what Black American you're around. If you're around a Black American from New York, they might not be so bothered. Even though I know Black Americans in New York who are bothered, we just don't feel like saying something. You just hear it too much. And for me to be biting my tongue all these years, and then finally I speak up and I say it's not cool, and I'm being attacked by all these Spanish-speaking people who are like from foreign lands trying to act like you have the right. And my hope to them is that they travel to other parts of the U.S. and get their shit rocked, okay? Because, no, that's ultimate disrespect, and I would never go to somebody else's country and do that shit. So I had to make a video about that. And to take into, you know, I told you, like, you know, what happened in Miami. I told you about the show, the Mexican girl in Chicago. Like, the history of blacks and Hispanics in Cuba is not good, but I mean in Miami is not good. It's not one of unity. It's not one of unity in LA. It's not one of unity in Chicago. Okay? And so and then you really feel so comfortable with saying that. It's always so surprising to me how comfortable people are doing that right in a black person's face. Even white people. But to me, I don't want to hear any black person using that word from anywhere. And I definitely don't if you're not from America. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a black American, what am I to say? I don't like it. But when you're not, I feel like you need to be checked. And I feel like, you know, you're not a part of this struggle here. You're not. And there's a lot of people who don't really fuck with us for real. But then you want to use the word. That shit, I'm side-eyeing it. And I just really had to get my piece out about that. I feel like I'm going to put it on my travel page too, because I just feel like people, when they go to other countries, I feel like they have more respect than we're here. It's like, it's just cool to trash Americans, and it's cool to trash black Americans and say ignorant things. Like Burna Boy said the same thing. Burna Boy said black Americans don't have any culture. And it's like, huh? You are copying your whole swag off of us. Saying that we're lost, we don't have any culture. And I've heard people say that to my face in New York. Meanwhile, people in New York don't know about the legacy of the marching bands down south, which are lit and off the chain. You know what I'm saying? There's so many dances. We have Lindy Hop from Harlem. We have Chicago Step, which derives from that. There's dancers from Memphis. There's New Orleans Second Line. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many black American dance forms. To be saying that we don't have any culture, that shit is sickening. But anyhow, our hip-hop is our culture. So I'm going to end that with that and just say to all the Hispanics out there, you need to stop with the N-word, okay? And don't, with all my black friends don't care, because your black friends are a few people of black America, and you might say that in the wrong place and have a problem. And you need to check yourself and feel like you're entitled to say it when we're telling you it's offensive. It's offensive. Like, what the fuck do you want to say it so bad for? Why does everybody want to copy us so bad? Think about that. Why don't you develop your own swag? I'm going to end that there, okay? I'm going to post this in both of my pages, and I will see you guys later. Bye.